welcome to the Power of Self-Awareness, and as is tradition, just people still joining us, but as is tradition, we will start with a safety moment. And the safety moment today is linked to the importance of self-awareness, and that is just a reminder actually that 95% of our time that we actually spend it on autopilot, where we are reacting and responding to a situation, or we react really to a situation rather than responding to a situation, where there's an element of choice if we choose to respond. And very often that means that we're putting ourselves or other people potentially more at risk. It may be that we're reacting appropriately by doing or saying something, saying the wrong thing. There's no real conscious thought goes behind our response when we're operating on autopilot. It's what is known as a reflex response. Now, most of the time, the consequences of an inappropriate or reflex response are negligible. However, there are times when working on autopilot can be quite dangerous and perhaps lead to an accident or some other form of personal safety risk. So, for example, if you're working on autopilot, you may not notice that a container has corroded and liquid is perhaps seeping out of it, which could then be harmful, possibly to the environment, or certainly potentially cause a person to slip. So by being more self-aware, we'll be able to have more control and choose how we will respond and act and behave in any given situation. So for those of you who perhaps not been on any of my webinars before, my name is Michelle McArthur-Morgan, and I'm a senior learning and wellbeing consultant. My background for the past 20 some years now has actually been in what I would say applied brain science, psychology, neuroscience, brain science, etc. And that's really what but it's very much not a theoretical kind of point of view or research point of view. I kind of work or attend various conferences and events where the world's leading researchers are there. They're sharing their findings, and then people like myself who are from the world of learning development, we actually are applying it to the world of work. So that's very much my kind of background. So what are we going to be talking about today? Well, the purpose of the webinar today is really to help cultivate your self-awareness skills by taking some time out to kind of truly understand yourself and how your actions and behaviours may be perceived by other people. We've all known people who are professionally brilliant, but whose people skills have dented their ability to make a real impact with others. So by increasing your levels of self-awareness, you'll be supercharging your own effectiveness, giving you that undeniable edge. During the webinars, we'll be helping you to appreciate why having higher levels of self-awareness are an important workplace skill. We'll be also helping you to know more about and understand more about your work style and your strengths. Also about gaining insights into how other people may perceive your behaviours and your communication, for example. Understand more about how you like to work and can actually do your best work. And then at the end, towards the end of the session, we're going to be looking at gaining some insights into your communication style and how to get your message heard. For those of you who joined a minute or two late, I did say by all means pop questions in chat as we go through, and I will try and answer them towards the end. And you will need a pen and paper also to hand to take part fully in the webinar today. So you might be saying to yourself, what on earth has a picture of a car being serviced got to do with self-awareness and what we're here to kind of chat about today? Well, just cast your mind back to a time when your car's been due to go in for a service. There's nothing really wrong with it as far as you're concerned. It's running perfectly fine. But it's that time of year and you've got to take your car in, so you're off your car goes. And when you go and collect your car, and you kind of get in it and start driving home, you notice that it's just driving like an absolute dream. It seems to be driving so much better than it was when you actually took it in, even though you didn't think there was anything wrong with it in the first place. Well, the difference is that while the car's been in for a service, the mechanics made a few adjustments, a bit of fine tuning here and there. And that fine tuning has made all the difference to the car's performance. And really today is going to be a little bit like that. As we increase or as you increase your self-awareness and aware of others, this leads to that little bit few tweaks being made here and there that then go on and improve and enhance your actual performance within the workplace. So self-awareness can make you perform better, understanding more about how you like to operate, your preferred behaviours, and really just about what makes you tick. It enables you then to make those few changes to adjust what you do or how you do things to help you build stronger, better relationships, feel less stressed, enjoy life more, and provide more insights for you into other people's actions and behaviours. So it's all really about learning how to approach different situations and how to interact with different people. So let's just take a look at what self-awareness actually is. One of the Oxford Dictionary's definitions is conscious knowledge of one's own character and feelings. The second one is the extent to which people are consciously aware of their interactions or relationships with others and of their internal states. Now that's the one that I really like. It goes that little bit deeper and it acknowledges it's not just about yourself, it's about the way you interact with other people and the relationships that you have with other people. Back in 2009, there was actually a study conducted by Cornell University and a company, learning development consultants called Green Peak Partners in the States. And they had a belief that the best leaders, the most successful leaders will be the ones that were the most autocratic, direct kind of leaders. And they did this whole research project and were absolutely astounded when, to put it into their words, because they actually named the actual report they did from the research after it. In their words, the nice guys finished first. And what they actually found was the leaders who were the most successful leaders were actually the ones that were most self-aware, that had that most emotional, higher levels of emotional intelligence, that were able to not only understand their own behaviours and actions, but those of other people as well, and build stronger, more trusting relationships. And there's actually a author and psychologist, Daniel Goleman, and they've written extensively about the importance of emotional intelligence, or EQ, or EI, as it's sometimes referred to, and how it actually affects our professional success and the vital role that self-awareness plays in helping us to have higher levels of emotional intelligence. And human skills have never been more important and critical to an individual and our teams and our organizations' successes now than they are just now, and not just for leaders either, across the whole kind of workforce. And certainly the kind of need for the human skills, higher level human skills, has been magnified by the events of the last 16 months or so. And there's something that we refer to as psychological safety. And that is how safe people feel to be themselves at work, to speak out, and not be frightened that people are going to be kind of, critical of them, etc. And psychological safety is at an all-time low at the moment. And really what we need to do is managers need to kind of rebuild, refocus the teams and rebuild that trust. This is where those human skills, and starting with that self-awareness, it underpins it all, comes into play. So I just want you to type in chat now, increased self-awareness. What can it actually help us to do? If we've got higher levels of increased self-awareness, what can it either kind of help us to do? What can it lead to an enhancement or an improvement in? So if you just want to pop your answers in chat, that would be brilliant. Thank you. Yeah, we've got a couple coming through. Brilliant. Yeah. So communicate effectively with others, be more productive, empathy, respect, recognize when we're stressed. Very good point. Yeah. Improve how we communicate, adapt to other, build stronger relationships. Absolutely. Teamwork. Yeah. Yeah. Being able to look after the needs of others. Absolutely. All kind of key important things, certainly within the workplace. So just to kind of summarize, you've got most of these points here, but they're just coming up on screen now. Confidence, decision-making, communication, relationship building, people management, stress management, resilience, teamwork, understanding actions, motivations of others, ability to adapt your behavior, coaching, dealing with change, client relationships and sales, negotiation, and leadership. So very much backing up entirely what you were saying, all those kind of areas that just by having that higher level of self-awareness can help us to enhance and to improve, to build those stronger, more effective relationships. So I just want to now kind of differentiate between personality and behavior, because those two words are used kind of interchangeably, but in kind of common everyday language. But actually, within the world that I live in, they're two very entirely different things. And if you look at the slide on screen, the words that have got the star at the side of, they are words that relate to personality. The heart relates to our behavior. So for personality, it's things like characteristics, qualities, traits, temperament, our makeup, whereas behavior is words such as conduct and actions, performance, observed and reaction. So personality is that combination of qualities or characteristics that form our distinctive character of who we are. Whereas behavior is more about the way in which we conduct ourselves, observable behaviors that other people can actually see within us. So why am I making this differentiation? Well, there isn't an important reason, and we're going to focus very much on behavior rather than personality, because personality is actually a poor indicator of people's performance. As people, we are highly adaptable and far more flexible than personality kind of profiling allows us to be. Personality tends to be more semi-fixed compared to behavior. Personality doesn't predict either or help us to predict how behavior changes over time. It gives us an excuse as well as personality not to adapt, because we know that personality is kind of semi-fixed. So therefore, there'll be things that just are not part of my makeup. Whereas behavior is very flexible and adaptable. And performance improvement is about that awareness of our current behavior and then identifying what we need to do differently and then consciously adapting our behavior for that improvement. Now, if you want to read more about this, you can actually, there's a book called The Secrets of Successful Behavior by Robin Stewart-Coates. And you can, by all means, have a look at that book, either purchase it or go to the library. I'm sure the library will stock it. So the thing about people is, and that's what we're going to be answering in this next little section. And I just ask you just to kind of spend a moment just reflecting as I ask you a couple of questions. You don't have to type anything in chat, just a bit of personal reflection really at this point. How well do you really know yourself? How often do you take time to work on your awareness and actually understanding yourself? Do you think you could actually be enjoying your time more? Do you use your strengths and your interests as much as you would like to? Really what I'm asking you is there anything that with a little bit of fine tuning could actually be better? And this is where that increased awareness and understanding of who you are can really start to help. So what I'd like you to do now is just get a pen and paper. You'll need a pen and paper for this next little activity we're going to do. In a moment, I'll put the next slide on and you'll see a photograph. And when it initially comes onto the screen, it's quite tiny, but it blows up to the full size of the slide. And what I'd just like you to do is on your paper, just write down, just jot down whatever you see in the photograph. Okay, so whatever you see in the photograph, just jot down a few things that you actually see when the photograph, as it comes on and then kind of progresses. So what do you see in the photograph? Yeah, a different shot of it. Okay. So we'll come back to that list in a moment or two. Now what I'd like you to do, you'll still need your pen and paper for this. And this time what I'd like you to do on your paper is just write for me your first and last name. So just write your first and last name on the paper, please. Now what I'd like you to do is put your pen into the other hand and write your first and last name again. Okay. So a question for you. And again, if you can pop your answer in chat for me, that would be brilliant. Second time around, how did it feel? What was it like writing your name that second time around? What did you notice about it as you wrote your name the second time around? Okay, liberating, slower, awkward, uncomfortable, odd. Yeah. Slower, it's harder, difficult. Yeah. Different, awkward and different. Slower, had to think. Yeah, absolutely. Now, I didn't actually time you because if I'm doing this in a kind of a face-to-face workshop, what I ask people to do is write their full job title and the first and last name. And then I often time them. First time around, when they write their name and the job title, etc., it takes between 15 to 30 seconds. Second time around, when they write it, it takes between 1 and 2 minutes. It takes up to 4 times longer. So it's slower. We have to think more about it. It feels awkward and uncomfortable. And it's actually using an awful lot more energy when we're writing with our non-preferred hand. And our behaviours are identical to that. As we go through, we're going to do a little activity into helping you to give a few insights into your behavioural preferences. When you're working from your preferred behaviors, it's like writing with your dominant hand, your preferred hand. It comes natural. You don't have to think about it. You're pretty good at it, and it just flows. But when we have to work from a non-preferred behavior, then it's like writing with the wrong hand. It feels a little bit strange, a little bit awkward. It takes us longer. It's more draining on our energy. So by just having that little basic insight, really, about understanding, when you're working from your preferred behaviors, when you're working from your lesser preferred behaviors, you can start to think about actually the effects it have on my energy, and how do I kind of plan that so that I'm not all the time draining away my energy. So what I'd like you to do now is just type into chat, but don't press send, all right? And what I want you to type into chat is just 2 or 3 things that you saw in the picture. Okay, I asked you to note down some things that you saw in the picture. What did you see? Just type in 2 or 3 things, but do not press send until I tell you. So just type it in and just don't press the send. And I'll just give you a couple of minutes to do that. Okay, you can press send. Perfect. Yeah. So there we've got cliff, sea, caves, blue water, cove, reef, water, cliff, different colours, chalk, the white rectangle. Yeah. Blue water, sunny day, a face, cave, water. Absolutely. People with questions. Yeah. Okay, excellent. Calming. A whole array of different things, but I was showing you exactly the same picture, but we all saw different things in it. Now, when it comes to thinking, we all have a preferred way of thinking. When a situation occurs, at a very basic level, there's 2 distinct ways we can view the situation. Some people, they will start with the facts of the situation. So those of you, the first few things you wrote on your list, if there were things like the cliff, water, what else? The cave, for example, factual things that were there. Other people, however, they go straight for the interpretation. So things that you wrote, like people that put sea, don't know it's sea. Yes, we do know it's water, but we don't know it's sea. It could be a lake, it could be anything. Calming is another interpretation. So at a very basic level, some people will start by looking at the facts of the situation. Other people will jump straight into the understanding and meaning of the situation. Now, this is where potentially conflicts can start to arise, because if you are discussing a situation, the same situation, you are both perhaps present, but one person is focusing in on facts, another person is focusing in on interpretation, it can be actually the cause of frustration and possibly even lead into conflict. So it's really key and important that what we actually do is we kind of, first of all, identify, are we the person who starts here with the factual, or are we somebody that starts here with the interpretation? Having worked out our starting point, it's then a case of saying, okay, so if I'm starting on factual, if the other person that I'm in conversation with is starting from a different place to me, it's not about agreeing, it's about somebody talking about the facts of the situation, the detail of the situation, while other people are talking about the bigger picture, the meaning. How can you make that connection? And then how can you also bring the other person round to actually really understanding where you are coming from. And again, it's not about agreement, it's just about understanding people's different perspectives. That's really kind of key and important. So to answer that question we started off about, the thing about people is they're all different. We are all very similar in many ways, but yet we're all uniquely different. So when it comes to behavior, there are 3 axes or dimensions that we actually look at: introversion and extroversion, thinking and feeling, intuition and sensing. So we're going to start off by looking at introversion and extroversion. Now, there is this myth that if you are shy, you must be an introvert. Sorry, it's nothing more than a myth. You can be a shy extrovert. You can be quite an outgoing introvert. Introversion and extroversion is all about where you get your energy from and how you like to process information. Introverts can be as noisy and as loud and as outgoing as anybody else. But when they start to tire, when their energy levels are low, then they start to quieten down, because what they do, they need to go kind of inside themselves to recharge their batteries. They recharge their energy levels internally by having that quieter, perhaps alone kind of time. Introverts also think before they speak, because they're processing information. So you will ask them a question and there's a moment before they answer, because they're processing that information. Extroverts, on the other hand, they take energy from the external world. So when they tire, they actually still like to be out amongst people, out somewhere where there's an atmosphere, somewhere that they can draw energy in from. An extrovert actually speak in order to think. So what I'd just like you to do is just kind of draw a line on a piece of paper, naught in the center, 10 at either end, and just put yourself a little cross on somewhere on that. It's an axis. We move up and down. It's not fixed. In certain situations, you'll behave more introvert, or in other situations, you might actually appear to be more extrovert. But we've all got a home base. So just place somewhere, just across somewhere on that axis that you've just drawn. So thinking about yourself, do you actually, when you're tired, do you just want kind of time alone, quieter time, perhaps a night in, just with you and your partner or your family? Or are you more an extrovert who actually draws in energy from the external world? So just a few little pointers here. How to work with extroverts. So if you're perhaps not an extrovert, you need to kind of have this awareness, because extroverts, I've already said, they speak in order to think. So very often the first things that they say are not necessarily their best kind of ideas. They're not refined, but as they continue to speak, they're continuing to think. Their ideas are being refined. Extroverts, we need to encourage their enthusiasm. Let them have that enthusiasm. Bring it to the forefront. Let them be enthusiastic about their ideas and their projects. Let them dive straight into things. Don't kind of try and pull them back from things. If they want to make a start on something, let them dive straight in. Respect their need for independence. Listen to their many, many, many different ideas that they'll come up with. And they tend to be quite... officially, we cannot multitask. I know I've said that to you on previous webinars, but they've got fingers in lots of pies, lots of things all going on. They're juggling, shall we say. That's the best way, and can become quite expert jugglers. For the introvert, now with the introverts, they need time to think in order to speak. So I've said there's that moment's kind of pause before they maybe give you an answer. They need time to actually think things through in order to arrive at a decision. They actually like privacy from time to time, and it's important that we respect that privacy. They need time sometimes just to work alone, to work on a project, to think it through for themselves on their own. They want people to actually listen to their ideas, and sometimes they can find that really quite difficult to get people's attention. And we need to provide them support to actually learn and work at their own pace. They work at a slightly different pace to the extroverts, or extroverts work at a slightly different pace to introverts, whichever way round. So what I want you to do is just think now for a moment, think about a typical team meeting. Team meetings naturally are geared towards the needs of an extrovert. What do you think? And pop your answers in chat. What do you think are some of the frustrations of an introvert in a team meeting when there is extroverts within the meeting? So what are the frustrations of the introverts within a team meeting where there's extroverts and introverts? Any ideas? Pop your answers into chat. Yeah, no time to think. Absolutely. Don't get heard. Volume, appearing not to be listened to, much talking. Yeah. Processing info, less speed to speak. Yeah. All those things. Absolutely. Not being able to get a word in. Yeah. The whole thing about that pace of the meeting, and because the extroverts, as soon as kind of somebody said something, they're straight in there. And it's very difficult for them, an introvert, to then be able to break into the conversation. And it's that whole lack of time to think things through. Very often that can lead to introverts being perceived by other people as not having anything to add, lacking in ideas or lacking in interest for whatever is being discussed. Another frustration is often that extroverts are the people who progress faster through organisations, not because they do their jobs any better, but they're just so good at getting noticed and marketing themselves within an organisation. So actually think about the way, if you're an organiser of meetings and things, think about the way you organise your meetings. It's really good if you can give people advance notice of what's going to be on the agenda, of any decisions that are going to have to be made at that meeting. If it's something that occurs within the meeting, by all means discuss it in the meeting, ask for thoughts and opinions within the meeting, but give people an option to say, look, you know, by all means, go away, have a think about it, and drop me an email or ring me, speak to me, whichever is most appropriate, you know, within the next, by the end of business tomorrow, for example. Give them 24 hours to reflect on it, think on it, and talk to other people about it. And that way you're at least starting to be far more inclusive for introverts as well as extroverts. Oops, we jumped. There we go. So, having decided whether you're more introvert or extrovert, and I want you to have a look at the 4 pieces of jigsaw, the 4 different coloured cards that you can see on screen. And you'll notice that on each card, there are 6 words and phrases. What I would like you to do is just select the piece that is most like you. Just decide, have a look at all those pieces, which piece, or it might be 2 pieces that you feel you can't choose between, is most like you. And you might also want to think about which piece is the least like you, but the one I'm interested in at the moment is the piece that is most like you. When you've made your mind up, just type either R for red, Y for yellow, G for green, and B for blue into chat. So you can just put one of the initials, RYGB, or 2 if you've got 2 equally. Green, blue, green, red. Caring, the green. Yeah. red and yellow. Yeah, blue, blue and red. Yeah. So again, we've got some lovely mix of colours there coming through. Some reds, blues, yellows, green, the whole kind of mix, which is brilliant, because the most effective teams are the most diverse teams. So there are 4 basic behavioural differences, and we've just done a very crude kind of way of profiling. By no means is it scientific, but it just gives you a little bit of an inkling, an insight into it. But we are all a unique combination, and if you were to do a profile, you'd come out with scores for each of those 4 styles. We're all a unique combination of them, and it doesn't matter whether you come out as a high score in red, yellow, green or blue. No one style or character, as we call them, are any better than another. We're all a combination. They've all got their great strengths. They've all got what we call their blind spots as well. So it's all about knowing who you are. That's your starting point. And then being able to be adaptable, flex your style to suit the people and the situation. So I'll just give you a little bit of a flavour. You probably gain that from the cards itself, but just a bit of a flavour for each of the 4 characters. So the red, we call her Ever Ready, actually. And for Ever Readies, it's all about achievement and success. Whatever success means to them. It doesn't have to be great, huge successes. It may be goals at work. It may be more personal things. It may be the success of booking your next fortnight's holiday. That can be a success. But they tend to be quite direct, blunt speaking, focused, driven, competitive, strategic thinkers. People that score higher in the yellow, we call ray or sunshine. And ray or sunshines, for them, it's all about enjoyment. It's about novelty. The great ideas people, great problem solvers, creative thinkers, very enthusiastic, pragmatic, and very resourceful. They always know the person that knows the person that can or does. The green is the caring character, all about protecting, helping other people, supporting other people, great team players, always put people before kind of tasks, compassionate, empathetic individuals. And lastly, our blue, we call Mr. Huey Blue. He maintains order and correctness, keeps us grounded. He likes structures and routines and habits and processes and systems. There's a right way, there's a wrong way, there's no midway. And he tends to be quite a cautious individual. So by now, hopefully you're starting to kind of recognize some of those characters. And as I say, you'll be able to recognize characteristics or behaviors from each of those 4 behavioral styles. It's not just we're all one style. So through the eyes of others, we also need to understand that if we overplay our characteristics, so if Ever Ready, who is quite a, as I say, a confident, assertive, blunt, direct speaking individual, if she overplays or if they overplay their strengths in the wrong situation at the wrong time, they may, instead of coming across as assertive, they may well come across as being aggressive, for example. They can come across as being quite rude, quite impatient people sometimes. If we then think about the ray of sunshine, again, overplay that kind of the fun element, their enthusiasm, overplay their creativity, then they can come across as totally dizzy and disorganized individuals. The green caring character can come across very much to other people sometimes as being quite a person that they're easily put upon. They'll do anything for everybody rather than kind of focusing on themselves sometimes. And Mr. Huey Blue, our blue character, he can be seen as a bit of a nitpicker, bit pedantic at times, a bit risk averse, very pessimistic at times. So they're not. but it's just how others may perceive them if they overplay their strengths in the wrong place at the wrong time. So again, it's really key and important we have that awareness. Just now going to show you a short video. If you can't, you should be able to hear the sound okay, but if you can't, just somebody put in chat that you can't hear the sound, and I'll just make an adjustment on the computer. It does start quietly, I have got to say, the video. Oops.
Good morning.
Good morning, Sarah. How are you?
Good, thanks. You?
Okay,
Yeah,
9 a.m. project meeting. Can we get going? I've got a lot to do today.
Don't we want to wait for everyone to come? Because Jessie's still not here and she's part of the meeting as well.
Listen, if she's late, she's late. That's not our problem. As you know, we're currently behind on 3 areas of our critical path, and we have to get these finished today. We're also behind on budget, so we've got to do it without incurring any more costs.
I got a new bike at the weekend.
On the way, what'd you go for?
It's got all the gadgets. I'll tell you later. I've got 9 o'clock. See ya. Bye. Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey, Jessie. How are you? How's the family?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Guys, can we just focus on the task at hand?
Yeah, sure. Who had the action points from the last meeting?
Right. Okay, I have copies for everyone and the agenda that I sent out earlier. Now, I've been analyzing the Gantt chart and I've identified 3 process areas that we can make improvements in within the operations team that I think will address all of these issues.
Have you actually spoken to the operations team? Because they're not part of this meeting and a lot of the decisions are going to impact them, so maybe they should be a part of it?
Listen, before we go out to the business units, we need to ensure that we've got the action points nailed down, rather than going to them with a bunch of fluff.
Okay, sounds like a good idea. Well, I'll tell you what. Why don't we get a load of ideas on paper? So who's got a few ideas? Shout them out. Ideas?
Hold up. This was not on our agenda, guys. We need to do this logically because remember, our suggestions have to be grounded in reality. There is no point giving them 50 ideas that make no sense.
I actually agree with Jessie on this because, everyone gets a chance to have something to say and 4 heads are better than 1. Can we at least agree on that?
Can we just get 3 action points on the board in the next 30 minutes?
Okay. So we all give out what we call tells, signals, if you like, signs, that actually help us to identify what behaviour other people are displaying at that time, what behavioural preference they're actually working from at that time. Now, it doesn't matter whether you have never met this person before, so it's equally valid for whether it's colleagues, whether it's friends, family, customers, it doesn't matter. You do not have to know the person at all. But within those first kind of 5-10 seconds at an absolute max, you can start to identify whether they're red, yellow, green, or blue at that moment in time. So put your answer into chat for me as we do it. The lady on screen now, was she red, yellow, green, or blue? Just type R, Y, G, or B. Yep, we've got a lot of yellows coming through. Absolutely. Because she arrived, she was late. I don't know if you saw on the clock, it was a 9 o'clock meeting. She arrived, she was chatting to a friend coming down the passageway, the corridor to the meeting. She kind of came in, just oblivious to the fact that she was kind of late. She wanted to be the one that got up to the flip chart. She drew a light bulb on the flip chart. It wasn't going to be a list of things, etc. So these are all tells that we give out. Excuse me. The lady that's on screen now, red, well, we know it's not yellow. Okay, yeah, blue, absolutely. So there, it was that organisation. She was the first there. Notice how everything was laid out in front of her. She had everything she needed. She took additional papers because she knew that other people wouldn't have brought their papers. She kept drawing them back to the agenda. This wasn't on the agenda. We need to stick to the process. So very much those blue kind of behaviours coming through. The gentleman now, what colour? Absolutely, red. All the way for, very results orientated. For goodness sake, let's just get 3 points on this piece of paper. Blunt, direct, to the point, very focused on getting the result that he wanted. And then, of course, our last gentleman was the green, of course. Yeah, absolutely. Concerned about getting everybody's opinions, collaborating with other people, concerned about the people who were actually involved in it but weren't actually present at the meeting as well. So again, what we started to do, and obviously that film is, filmed to be a little bit exaggerated, shall we say, with people's behaviours to help you identify them. But you'll be surprised if you just kind of just step back and just observe people around you after the webinar or tomorrow, whenever, you'll start to see people in terms of colours. You'll see the behaviours in terms of colours. If we actually see them in colours, then what we can start to do is we can start to adapt our style. So, for example, and this is kind of links nicely into the slide here, what do we need to do if we are working with the red character, for example? How could we actually support the red character so they can do their best work? Well, we can support them by not overloading them with too much information. The red character is just like that kind of high level kind of outcome. What's the outcome? When does it need to be achieved by, and what are the resources I've got in order to achieve it? That's about as much detail as they need. And they need to be then let alone given that autonomy to actually get on and achieve the result that you want. With the ray of sunshine, and please be reflecting upon this yourself, what do you need? Because this is, again, a good conversation to have with your colleagues back in the workplace. What do you need to help you? What do you need from them to help you do your best work? With Ray or Sunshines, they like to be given that bit of freedom, that flexibility, to be able to use their creativity, to be kind of problem solvers. They don't like being bogged down with kind of ongoing projects. They're great starters, not completer finishers. So get them involved in projects early, allow them to use that enthusiasm. They're great influencers, so they very much need to be with people and where there's a source of energy. With the green carey character, then for the careys, it's all about that teamwork. They want to collaborate with people. They want to discuss matters with people before any decisions are made. They want a supportive environment. They want to feel valued as part of that as part of the team. They want to be listened to. They want to feel appreciated, and again, involved within the team. And Mr. Huey Blue, well, he just likes organisation and he wants you to give him the detail. Please, it's no good sending, a couple of lines in an email and Mr. Huey Blue's not going to know what to do with that. He wants all the detail, all the relevant information. He wants structure. He likes routines. He likes to know what he's doing from day to day, week to week. So, and he likes to play it by the book, play it by the rules, whatever it says in that procedures manual, that's what he wants to be able to do. So that's just, again, a little bit of an insight, but please, we've only got time to kind of glaze over things really today. But think about from your own perspective, what do you need for you to be able to do your best work? How do you want other people to react and interact with you? What type of information do you need? Lots of detail, just high level information. So, I've lost my mouse now. Oh, there we go. Communication then. Certainly when I was kind of a teenager and going through university and colleges, etc., there was always this saying around kind of customer service. You'd always treat your customer, like you'd like to be treated. And they used to say exactly the same thing of communication, or communicate with other people as you would like to be communicated with. And in actual fact, that It's just not so at all. We need to treat people or communicate with people as they like to be communicated with, not in your style. And that, unfortunately, it's one of the fundamental reasons we are so bad as human beings. I really struggle to understand why we are such poor communicators. When we start communicating before we're actually born, we start communicating one way or another in the womb. And until the day that we die, we're communicating in some way. But yet we are so poor at it. And what we need to do is stop communicating in our style, but communicate in the style of the people we are communicating with. So here's a few little pointers. If you have to communicate with an ever ready, then think in bullet points, deliver it in bullet points. Keep it to the facts. Don't start involving emotions. That doesn't work at all. Ever readies display little or no emotion. They want the headlines, they want the facts of the situation, and they hate any form of wastage. And that includes words. So don't waste your words. Bullet points are by far the best way with the ever ready. I did some work with a colleague, and we know each other really, really well. And they sent me an email, and this email just said, just do it. That's all it said. No Michelle at the top, no who it was from at the bottom, nothing. It just literally said on the email, just do it. And another colleague of mine actually saw this email and they went, are you really accepting that email from him? And I said, yeah, what's wrong with it? Well, how rude is that email? And I went, no, it's not. I know. He was read, I was read. It was the perfect communication for us. But for a colleague who had a much higher green in them, for them, that was a very rude email. For me, it was spot on and perfect. So we need to adapt our communication style. When we're communicating with yellows, ray or sunshines, they use lots of metaphors and stories, visual, colourful language, very big picture. They're into concepts and ideas and futuristic visions and dreams. They need to kind of be involved in conversations. They need to feel part of it. If it's verbal communication, they need to see your passion for what you're talking about. Please don't try to engage with a ray of sunshine if you are delivering a very monotone style, because they'll just totally not listen. They'll switch off. So they need to see your passion, your enthusiasm for whatever you are talking about. With our green caries actually and Huey Blues speak slightly slower than reds and yellows. Reds and yellows tend to talk quite quickly and quite loud. In contrast, caries speak softer, and Huey Blues and caries tend to speak slightly slower. So again, if you are a red or a yellow, tone it down a little bit, just slightly, not to the stage of being patronizing, but just slightly kind of ease off the pace a little. Caries like longer, more wordy explanations. They kind of work up to the message. They like to do the pleasantries, they ask, how are you? And they genuinely are interested, and they will genuinely listen and be concerned for what you're saying. Mr. Huey Blue, for him, it's about logical, sequential, detailed information, very, very structured. Give them that thinking time. When you ask them a question, give them that space to think before they respond. Be prepared for all their questions. They'll tend to ask you lots of questions: who, what, why, when, where. And they'll need you to have that information available for them. So just as we start to wrap, then here's an email, the same email to the red, the yellow, the green and the blue. And you can see the difference. And in fairness, the Huey Blue one at the bottom, I had to cut short just to fit it on the slide. It could have gone on for much longer than that. So when you're writing an email, by all means, write your email, but don't press send. then go back and think, who is the person I'm writing to? What is their preference? And then adjust your style accordingly. If you're communicating to many people, then the thing to do there then is to actually a familiar but not too familiar greeting at the top, then 2 or 3 bullet points with the key important message in it, then open it up into a little bit more conversation, and then attach documents or links. That way you've covered all 4 different styles and preferences. This is a typical what we call the communication dilemma that happens in organizations. And this just shows how communication can go adrift. And at the kind of frontline team staff tend to have a higher degree of green. Team leaders tend to have a little bit more blue, but it's still green and blue. By the time we get to kind of middle senior managers, then we're very much into red with some yellow. And at the board level, it's very much that red, maybe a slight tinge of blue and some yellow in there. And what happens is the directors will send out a message. They inform the managers. That's fine because they're both talking red language. But the managers, that middle management level, cascade the message down to team leaders, and it comes across in red language, but it's being received by blue. And there isn't sufficient detail. It's too kind of results orientated, not enough how, whys and wheres and whens and whos. The blues then have to pass it on to the frontline staff. And very often, and I'm sure you've said it or heard it yourself, it comes down as the brown stuff. And that's really what it can feel like because the language hasn't been translated. And then when it goes back up, it's not translated as it goes back up the way. And so it's by the time it's getting back to senior managers and directors, it's still green language, which doesn't hit home. And just to end on, I'll just give you a very quick little story. A friend of mine was the human resource director, personnel manager, he was in the day, director, for a big brewery. And they had a real horrendous problem with staff retention. And he kept going to the monthly board meetings and saying to them, look, we really do have a problem here. You know, our staff retention, people are leaving, so many thousands, hundreds are leaving every month. It's costing, sorry, he didn't say costing at that point. He said so many people are leaving every month. And they kept saying, well, you know, there's plenty more people. We can recruit easily enough. Plenty of people want work, so don't worry about it. And he was getting more and more frustrated, and he had a huge green chunk in him. And he was getting frustrated, and somehow he'd got to find a way to get his message across. So one day, more out of frustration really than planning, he went into that board meeting and he actually said to them, look, do you know it is costing us X thousands of pounds per month with the staff turnover, the amount of staff that are leaving, the recruitment costs, the induction training costs, it is costing. And literally the board turned around and looked at him and said, why haven't you said this to us before? And he said, I have. But he hadn't spoken their language. He'd been speaking green people language, not red boardroom results language. So we need to adapt our style. Okay, so that brings us to the official bit. And I appreciate it's now 1 minute past 3. So if you need to leave, that's absolutely fine. People has put a question, how a staff can talk to a manager who is insecure generally, but wants to be listened to show is a boss, where in which colour this manager can't be placed. So how staff, so is that how, do you want to just unmute yourself for a second, Claudia, and just kind of, is it Claudia? Yeah, and just talk to me about that. Oh, you don't have a microphone. Okay. Sorry about that. So you're asking, how can a staff member talk to a manager that is insecure? Is that the question? Yes, right. So if you've got an insecure manager, the staff member, it's really building up, first of all, trust, because it's one of the things we would need to know in order to give better advice would be what is it that is making the manager insecure? Is it lack of experience? Is it past experiences, either, within the organization, previous teams, or outside the organization? Is it something that goes all the way back to his childhood, her childhood? So it's really understanding what it is that is making them insecure. That's the first thing. But the first thing you need to do is to build trust. And the way to build trust is really just by being there for them. Actually, if they kind of start speaking to you, show an interest, ask questions, try and open conversations with them, and just try and bridge that gap so that they feel more comfortable around you. It's not an easy thing to do by any means, but as I say, without really knowing a little bit more about it, you see, the manager could be, and we haven't gone into this today, but it could be that the manager is feeling outside their comfort zone and they've got quite a green behavioural preference outside the comfort zone, then they may well come across as being insecure. It could be, on the other hand, it could be somebody, a manager who is under quite a lot of stress and kind of quite severe chronic stress, because when we're under chronic stress, our behaviour flips and we can be perceived by others as being one colour, when in actual fact, it's not. It's because we're under great levels of stress. So sorry, I can't kind of be more helpful than that. But by all means, if you want to contact me outside the webinar, please do so. And I'm happy to chat and see if I can give you any more help. It was helpful. Good. Thank you. Okay, so any more questions? If not, I will say thank you very much for attending. And I hope you found a few pointers in there and found it helpful. And look forward to hopefully seeing you at some future webinars or workshops. Can we please get a copy of the slides? Yes, you will get a copy of the slides. Catherine gets copies of the slides, and there's also, there'll be a recording either of this webinar or the one I did. It was the same subject, but I did a session a couple of weeks ago. So there'll be a recording available on your intranet and also the slides. Thank you. This is really helpful. Thank you. Please enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.
Okay, thank you.